Have you ever felt like your mind is trapped in an endless loop of thoughts, spinning faster and faster, until you feel like you're suffocating in your own head? The worries of tomorrow, the regrets of yesterday, and the constant pressure to be more. What if I told you there's a secret, a hidden truth, that has been quietly waiting for you to discover it? A path so simple, so profound, that it can immediately release you from the chains of overthinking and restore the peace you've been longing for, but never knew how to grasp. What if all this time, the key to true peace wasn't about fighting your thoughts, but about letting them pass like clouds? What if silence wasn't the absence of sound, but the presence of awareness? Tonight, we embark on a journey that will shake the foundation of everything you thought you knew about peace. Through Zen stories and timeless Buddhist teachings, we'll unravel the secrets to quieting the mind and soothing your soul. But be warned, once you open this door, you may never see the world or your own mind the same way again. So take a deep breath, allow yourself to relax, and let go of everything that's been weighing you down, because the journey to the deepest peace of your life begins now. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community at Buddhism in every moment to support the channel and keep the wisdom flowing. Let's walk this path of inner peace together, one story, one breath, one moment at a time. Part 1. The story of Miles, the weight of worries. The world moves at a relentless pace. Its demands, expectations, and constant noise pull us in every direction. It's almost as if we're on a never-ending treadmill, each step heavy with the weight of worries, regrets, and unspoken fears. For many, this weight becomes invisible, a quiet, persistent burden that we carry every day. It's only when we stop and reflect that we begin to notice how tightly we've been holding on to it. Miles, a middle-aged man with a successful career, was one of those people. On the surface, his life seemed perfect. He had a family, a well-paying job, and a house that others would envy. But beneath the surface, Miles was trapped. Trapped in his own mind, the illusion of control. Every day, Miles woke up to an alarm that sounded more like a command. He didn't need to check his phone. He already knew what the day would look like. Endless meetings, emails, phone calls. There was no time to slow down, no time to breathe. Every minute was scheduled, every decision was calculated, every move measured. But despite his best efforts, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He would sit at his desk, staring at the papers in front of him, but his mind would wander. It wasn't that he didn't care about his work. He did. But his mind constantly flitted between worries about his children's future, his wife's health, and the constant pressure of performing at his best. In the back of his mind, he could hear the nagging thought, "What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" The more he tried to suppress these thoughts, the louder they became, the weight of worry. It wasn't just at work. At home, Miles found it difficult to switch off. He couldn't escape the endless loop of self-doubt and fear that consumed him. He would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through a never-ending list of what-ifs. What if I lose my job? What if I let my family down? What if I can't provide for them? These thoughts circled around his mind like vultures, never giving him a moment of peace. His wife, Grace, often tried to comfort him. "You're doing great, Miles." "You're enough," she would say, but her words felt hollow. How could he be enough when his own mind told him otherwise? The weight of these worries felt like chains, invisible yet ever present. And the more Miles tried to break free, the tighter they became. A silent escape. One evening, after yet another exhausting day of work, Miles found himself driving aimlessly through the city. The streets were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. He didn't have a destination in mind. He was just driving. As he navigated through the familiar streets, he passed a park, a place he hadn't visited in years. It was small, surrounded by tall trees that loomed like silent sentinels. The peaceful stillness of the park seemed like a contrast to his racing thoughts. Without thinking, Miles turned into the parking lot and got out of the car. The cool evening air brushed against his face as he walked towards the park bench. For the first time in what felt like forever, Miles allowed himself to simply sit. No phone, no emails, no demands. The park was empty, save for a couple of people jogging along the paths. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the trees. Miles closed his eyes and tried to take a deep breath, but as soon as he did, his thoughts came rushing back. What about the project at work? What if I don't meet the deadline? What if my boss is upset with me? He tried to push them away, but they wouldn't go. The more he resisted, the more they overwhelmed him. The encounter with the monk. It was then that he noticed the old man sitting across the park under a tree with a simple mat spread out beneath him. His appearance was unassuming, wearing a simple robe, his posture serene. His eyes were closed, and his hands rested in his lap, as if in deep meditation. There was something about him that exuded calm, an energy that was different from the frenetic pace of the world Miles had been immersed in. Without thinking, Miles stood up and walked over to the man. He felt an inexplicable pull. Something inside him knew that this was the person he needed to speak to. The monk opened his eyes slowly as Miles approached and gave him a soft smile. "May I sit with you?" Miles asked, unsure of why he was even asking. He felt like he was seeking something, but he wasn't sure what. "Of course," the monk replied, his voice calm and warm. "The park is open to all." Miles sat down next to the monk, unsure of what to say. For a moment there was only silence. Then the monk spoke again, his words gentle, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "You are troubled," the monk said, his eyes looking directly into Miles's. Miles nodded. "I can't seem to stop the thoughts, the worries. They never go away. They're always there, nagging at me. What if I'm not enough? What if I fail?" The monk smiled softly. "Tell me when you are driving, where are your feet?" Miles blinked, confused. "My feet? They're on the pedals, I guess." "Exactly," the monk said, his tone gentle yet firm. "Your feet are on the pedals, but your mind is elsewhere. You are living in your head, constantly running towards something that may or may not be real. Your mind, like the car, is always moving. But you are not present. You are not here, not with your feet, not with your body." Miles sat back, his mind slowly absorbing the monk's words. The monk reached down beside him and picked up a small pebble from the ground. He handed it to Miles. "Hold this," the monk said. Miles took the pebble, feeling its smooth surface and cool weight. The monk looked at him with kind eyes and said, "Now, with this pebble in your hand, do you feel its weight? Do you feel it here in this moment?" Miles nodded slowly. "Yes, I feel it." "Good," the monk said. "Now when your mind races, when your thoughts pull you in 1,000 directions, think of this pebble. Think of how it is here in your hand in this moment. Your mind, like this pebble, needs to rest. It is not meant to race endlessly. It is meant to be at peace, to simply exist in the present." The monk's words hung in the air, like the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. Miles felt something shift inside him. The weight of his worries, though still there, felt a little lighter. The idea of just being present, of not chasing every thought that crossed his mind, felt liberating. The beginning of change. "Your thoughts will come," the monk continued, "but you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that can observe them. Like the sky, vast and open, your thoughts are like clouds passing through. Do not attach yourself to them. Let them come and let them go. You are the sky, not the clouds." For the first time in a long while, Miles felt a sense of calm begin to settle within him. The endless cycle of worry and overthinking didn't seem so insurmountable anymore. The monk stood up and Miles followed suit, feeling as if something had been unlocked inside him. He looked at the monk, who smiled gently. "You are not alone in your struggle, Miles," the monk said, "but you can choose to stop running. Peace is not found in the future nor in the past. It is found here in the present." As Miles walked back to his car, he felt a quiet shift within him. The pebble, though no longer in his hand, remained in his mind, a symbol of stillness, of peace. He realized that peace wasn't something to chase, but something to embrace. Before you rush back into the chaos of life, take a moment to breathe. The path to peace begins with just one step, the step of awareness. If you're ready to take that step and continue on this journey towards stillness and clarity, I invite you to subscribe to Buddhism in every moment. By joining our community, you'll help us continue creating content that brings peace to the mind and light to the soul. Part 2. The Wisdom of the Stream, Embracing Impermanence. The mind is a curious thing. It constantly churns, moves, and races ahead, like a restless stream flowing through rocky paths, never pausing, never still. We often hear the term going with the flow, but how often do we actually allow ourselves to truly flow with life instead of fighting it? The struggle between our desires and reality, between what we want and what is a battle that many of us fight daily. Lily, a young artist, was one such person. She had a deep love for painting, but her love for perfection was even greater. Every brushstroke had to be flawless, every color carefully chosen, every composition meticulously planned. The pressure to create the perfect masterpiece weighed heavily on her heart, and she had yet to realize that in her chase for perfection, she was losing sight of what truly mattered, the joy of creation itself. Lily's struggle. The weight of perfection. Lily's studio was a small, cozy space in her apartment. The walls were covered with unfinished canvases, some half-painted, others with faint sketches waiting to be brought to life. Yet despite the hundreds of ideas dancing in her mind, none of them had been completed. She would start a painting with passion, but soon her doubts would creep in. Is this good enough? What if it's not perfect? She would stand before her canvas for hours, a brush in hand, yet paralyzed by her thoughts. The more she tried to control her creativity, the more it slipped through her fingers like sand. She would abandon one painting for another, hoping that the next one would finally be the one that satisfied her. But nothing ever was. The stream of her thoughts rushed on, and Lily remained stuck, drowning in the current of her own expectations. One evening, after another frustrating day in the studio, Lily took a walk through the nearby Zen garden. It was a small sanctuary tucked away behind a wall of bamboo, a place where people went to meditate and reconnect with the world around them. The stillness of the garden, the soft rustling of the leaves, and the gentle trickle of water from the stone fountain made her feel, for the first time in a while, that she could finally take a deep breath. The encounter with the Zen master. As she sat by the fountain, taking in the peaceful surroundings, an elderly man walked up to her. His face was calm, unhurried, and his smile carried the wisdom of someone who had seen much in his years. He was the Zen master of the garden, a teacher who had spent decades practicing mindfulness and guiding others to find peace within. The Zen master sat beside Lily, his presence so serene that it seemed to quiet the world around them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the water and the wind through the trees filled the space between them, creating a peaceful atmosphere that Lily had been desperately seeking. Finally, the Zen master spoke. "What troubles you, young one?" Lily hesitated, unsure how to put her thoughts into words. "I feel like I'm failing," she said softly. "Every time I pick up my brush, I can't help but worry. I'm always chasing something, the perfect painting, the perfect composition, but I never seem to reach it. I feel stuck, like I'm fighting the current." The Zen master nodded, his gaze gentle. You are trying to control the river, but the river is not meant to be controlled. It flows freely, naturally, without attachment. Why do you struggle against it? Lily felt a pang in her chest. I've been trying to control it all along, she thought. But how could she let go? How could she release the grip on perfection that had defined her art, her life, her identity? The lesson of the stream. Embracing impermanence. The Zen master smiled again, as though he had been waiting for her to ask that very question. The stream does not question its flow, he said softly. It simply flows. It doesn't strive to be perfect. It simply embraces each moment as it comes. Each bend, each ripple is part of its journey. The stream does not cling to any particular shape or form. It simply moves with the changes, flowing freely from one moment to the next. Lily listened intently, the metaphor of the stream settling into her mind. But I don't know how to stop trying so hard, she confessed. I've always thought that perfection was the goal. That if I just worked hard enough, focused enough, I would get there. But now, I'm realizing that I'm just chasing something that doesn't exist. The Zen master's eyes twinkled with understanding. The pursuit of perfection is like chasing a mirage. It keeps moving further away, no matter how hard you run toward it. But the truth is, there is no such thing as perfection. There is only the moment. The stream does not try to be perfect. It simply flows, and in its flow it is already perfect. Lily felt the weight on her chest begin to lift, as if the Zen master's words had unlocked something deep inside her. What if I could stop chasing? She wondered. What if I could simply paint without worrying about what it should look like? The practice of acceptance, the beauty of imperfection. The Zen master continued, perfection is an illusion. It is a concept that lives in the future, but the present moment is where life unfolds. When you let go of your attachment to perfection, you free yourself to create freely. Embrace the imperfections in your work, and you will see that they are not flaws, but the natural expression of your journey. Lily closed her eyes and took a deep breath, the sound of the fountain soothing her mind. For the first time in a long while, she felt something shift inside her. The pressure to be perfect, to control every detail, seemed less important. Instead, she began to see her art as a journey, not a destination. The Zen master stood up and gestured to the flowing stream beside them. Life flows like this stream, constantly changing. The leaves that float on its surface are never the same. They change shape, they float away, and then new leaves come. Just as the leaves come and go, so do our thoughts, our emotions, and our creations. Embrace the flow of life. Do not try to control it. Let go, and you will find peace. Lily watched the water for a long while, her mind still and clear for the first time in ages. She realized that her struggle had been about trying to freeze the moment, to hold onto a version of herself that didn't exist. But the stream didn't stop to hold onto the leaves. It let them go, and in doing so, it was free. The ripple effect, transformation begins. As she left the garden that evening, Lily felt different, lighter. Her thoughts, which had once felt like a storm, now felt like a gentle breeze. She wasn't trying to force them away. Instead, she was learning to let them flow through her, observing them without attachment, just as the Zen master had taught her. That night back in her studio, Lily sat before her canvas. This time, she didn't focus on creating something perfect. She picked up her brush and allowed herself to simply paint, to express herself without fear of failure. The brushstrokes flowed effortlessly, each one a moment of presence, not perfection. Lily had learned that the beauty of life and of art wasn't in trying to control it, but in allowing it to unfold naturally. The stream of her thoughts, her creativity, and her life could flow freely now, and in that flow she found peace. Part 3. The boulder, the burden of overthinking. Imagine carrying a heavy boulder, not on your back, but inside your mind. It's the weight of every unresolved problem, every what if, every thought that circles around like a bird trapped in a cage. For many of us, overthinking isn't just an occasional habit, it's a way of life. We carry the weight of our worries, even when we don't realize it. Every decision, every action, every word spoken feels heavier when filtered through the lens of overthinking. The stress, the second guessing, the constant questioning of whether we made the right choice, whether we are doing enough, it all becomes an invisible burden we carry each day. Jack, a man in his 40s, was a perfect example of someone burdened by overthinking. On the outside, he appeared calm and collected, the picture of a successful corporate lawyer. He had a family, a beautiful home, and a job that many would envy. But beneath the surface, Jack was trapped in a world of never-ending thoughts, doubts, and fears. His mind constantly raced, unable to stop, unable to find peace. The endless loop, Jack's struggle with overthinking. Every day, Jack woke up to a schedule packed with meetings, phone calls, and deadlines. The first thing he did when he opened his eyes was check his phone for emails. Another day of work, another day of navigating the demands of his high-pressure job. His thoughts immediately began to churn. Did I remember everything for that meeting? Did I offend my colleague yesterday? What if I missed something important today? Even when Jack wasn't working, his mind was in overdrive. He would lie awake at night, tossing and turning, running through the events of the day, wondering if he had said the right thing to his boss, or whether he should have handled that situation differently. He would think about his children. Were they getting enough of his time? Were they happy? Was he being a good father? But no matter how much he worried, no answer came. The thoughts just kept piling on top of each other like stones in a wall. And yet Jack couldn't stop himself from worrying. It was as if he was addicted to the cycle, as if his mind had created a barrier between him and peace, the boulder in his path. One evening, after another exhausting day of overthinking, Jack found himself walking home from his office. The city around him was bustling with activity, the sound of traffic, people talking, the bright lights of the shops lining the streets. But Jack didn't see any of it. His mind was still racing, consumed by 1,000 thoughts. He reached his apartment and walked into the building, still lost in his mental fog. As he waited for the elevator, he glanced at the old man sitting in the lobby. The man was seated in a quiet corner, an unassuming figure dressed in simple clothes. Jack had seen him many times before, but tonight, something about the man caught his attention. There was a calmness to him that Jack couldn't understand, a serenity that seemed to be untouched by the chaos around him. Jack walked up to the man and on a whim sat down next to him. The old man looked at him with kind, weathered eyes. "Something is troubling you," the old man said, his voice soft and inviting. Jack hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I just can't stop thinking. It's like my mind is a boulder I can't get rid of. I try to rest, but I can't. The thoughts just keep coming." The old man nodded slowly. "The boulder you speak of. It is not a physical one, yet it weighs heavier than any stone. It is the burden of your mind." Jack looked at him confused. "What do you mean?" The old man smiled gently. "The mind can be a great tool, but when we cling to our thoughts, when we overthink, it becomes like a boulder. We carry it everywhere, even when we don't need to. This weight isn't real, Jack. It's something you've created in your mind. The lesson: you are not your thoughts." The old man stood up and motioned for Jack to follow him. "Come," he said, leading Jack to a small park behind the building. The park was quiet, with only the soft rustle of leaves in the trees and the chirping of distant birds. There was a bench near a small pond, and the old man gestured for Jack to sit. "Imagine," the old man began, "that you are carrying a boulder. You walk with it every day over every path. At first, it is heavy, but you get used to it. It becomes a part of you. But you forget something important. You don't need to carry it. You are not the boulder. Jack listened intently, intrigued by the simplicity of the metaphor. The boulder is like your thoughts, the old man continued. You may believe they define you, that you must carry them, but in reality they are just passing clouds in the sky. They come and go. You are the sky, not the clouds. Jack furrowed his brow, still unsure. But how do I stop overthinking? How do I stop carrying this weight? The old man smiled gently and held up a small stone from the ground. This stone, he said, is like a thought. When you hold it, you feel its weight, its presence. But it is not you. You are the hand that holds it, not the stone. Jack took the stone from the old man's hand and felt its cool surface. So, what do I do with the thoughts I don't want to carry? The old man's eyes softened. You don't need to do anything. Simply acknowledge them. Hold them for a moment like this stone. Then let them go. Just as you let the stone fall from your hand, let your thoughts fall away. You don't need to keep carrying them. They are not yours to bear forever. The practice, letting go of the boulder. Jack sat in silence, holding the stone in his hand. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't consumed by his thoughts. He was just sitting present with the stone. He imagined his worries, the boulder in his mind, and like the stone, he let them fall. The old man sat beside him, not speaking, but allowing Jack to experience the stillness for himself. Jack slowly began to understand. The boulder wasn't a part of him. It wasn't something that had to define him. It was just a weight he had chosen to carry, and he could choose to put it down. The more he practiced, the more he realized that his thoughts didn't have to control him. He could observe them, acknowledge them, and then let them go. He didn't need to chase them. He didn't need to let them pull him into a spiral of worry and fear. The freedom of release. As Jack walked back to his apartment later that evening, he felt lighter. The thoughts that had once weighed him down were still there, but they didn't feel as heavy. He had learned to let them go, to stop identifying with them. The boulder was no longer his burden to carry. That night, as he lay in bed, Jack closed his eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time in what felt like forever, his mind was still. He wasn't thinking about the future or the past. He wasn't trying to fix everything. He was just present in the moment. In that moment of stillness, Jack realized something profound. Peace wasn't something to chase. It was always there, just waiting for him to let go. As Jack's journey continued, so too does ours. We all carry our own boulders, our own burdens of overthinking and worry. But we don't have to carry them forever. We can choose to let them go, to release the weight of our thoughts, and to live more fully in the present. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. Like the sky, vast and clear, you have the power to let the clouds pass without holding onto them. If you're ready to begin letting go of your own boulders, to stop the cycle of overthinking and to embrace the freedom that comes with release, keep walking this path with us. Part 4. The gift of silence, quieting the mind. Imagine standing in the middle of a busy street. The sounds of traffic, chatter, music, and the constant hum of the world filling your ears. Now imagine the noise isn't just outside, but inside your mind. The thoughts, worries, fears, and endless to-do lists, they race through your mind, drowning out the stillness. For most of us, the inner noise is even louder than the external chaos. It's relentless, constant, and often overwhelming. The mind, much like the city street, can be chaotic. It's filled with noise, thoughts that demand attention, worries that weigh us down, and emotions that cloud our judgment. In the midst of this storm, silence can seem like a distant dream. We long for peace, for stillness, but it always feels just out of reach. Sarah, a high-powered executive in her early 40s, had lived in this mental chaos for years. She had grown so accustomed to it that she didn't even realize how much it was affecting her. The stress of managing her career, her family, and her own self-imposed expectations had created a constant noise in her mind. She was exhausted, mentally and physically, but she didn't know how to quiet the storm. The relentless pace, Sarah's struggle. Sarah's life was a whirlwind. Every day was filled with meetings, deadlines, and decisions to be made. She would wake up early, check her phone for emails, and immediately jump into the hustle of the day. She lived in a constant state of urgency, as if time was slipping through her fingers. At work, she was the one everyone turned to. She was the problem solver, the decision maker, the leader. But behind the mask of competence, Sarah was burning out. She couldn't remember the last time she had truly relaxed, the last time she had simply been present without a million thoughts running through her mind. Her personal life wasn't any better. Sarah loved her family deeply, but her relationship with her husband, James, had become strained. They spent more time texting each other than talking face to face. Their conversations were about logistics, about what needed to be done, but there was little connection. She felt like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, her career, her family, her own well-being. And through it all, the noise in her head never stopped. At night, when Sarah finally had a moment to herself, she couldn't sleep. Her mind would race, replaying the events of the day, worrying about tomorrow. Did I do enough today? Was I a good mother, a good wife? What if I'm not enough? These thoughts circled like a tornado, taking away her peace and leaving her feeling more drained than before. The invitation to silence. One evening, after another exhausting day, Sarah found herself sitting on the balcony of her apartment, staring out at the city below. The lights from the buildings twinkled like stars, and the sound of the city was distant but ever-present. Sarah had been working non-stop for months, and she knew she needed a break, but the thought of slowing down felt impossible. It was then that she received a call from her friend, Elaine, a longtime friend and fellow executive who had taken time off to travel and meditate. "Sarah, you need to come with me," Elaine said, her voice calm and soothing. "I've found something that can help. You need silence, Sarah, not just the silence of the world, but the silence of the mind." At first, Sarah was skeptical. Silence? How could she, someone who thrived on productivity and constant motion, find peace in silence? But there was something in Elaine's voice that resonated with her, a deep sense of peace that Sarah had longed for. She agreed to join her friend on a weekend retreat in the mountains, hoping that somehow, amidst the stillness, she could find a way to quiet her mind. The retreat, embracing the stillness. The retreat was held at a small, secluded monastery nestled in the mountains, far away from the noise of the city. When Sarah arrived, she was immediately struck by the silence. There were no phones, no distractions, just the peaceful hum of nature. The air was crisp, and the only sounds were the birds in the trees and the occasional rustling of leaves in the wind. Elaine led Sarah to a simple room with a small bed, a desk, and a window that opened to a view of the mountains. "This is where you'll stay," Elaine said. "For the next few days, you'll practice silence, no talking, no texting, no distractions. Just you, your thoughts, and the world around you." Sarah was nervous. She wasn't sure she could handle it. How could she spend an entire weekend in silence when her mind was so loud? But as she settled into the room, she decided to give it a try. Over the next few days, Sarah began to experience something she hadn't felt in years: peace. She spent her mornings walking through the monastery's gardens, breathing in the fresh mountain air. She sat by the river that ran through the property, letting the sound of the water wash over her. She practiced meditation, focusing on her breath and letting her thoughts pass like clouds in the sky. At first, Her mind resisted. The thoughts came rushing in. What's going on at work? Is the family okay? But instead of following them, she simply acknowledged them and let them pass. These thoughts are not me, she realized. I am not defined by them. Slowly, she began to understand that peace didn't come from stopping her thoughts, but from accepting them and letting them go. In the evenings, the monks would gather the group together for silent reflection. Sitting in stillness, Sarah felt a deep sense of connection to the world around her. The mountains, the river, the trees, they were all part of the same peaceful energy that she was beginning to tap into. For the first time, she realized that true silence wasn't the absence of sound, but the presence of awareness. The lesson: silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of awareness. One evening, after a day of reflection, Sarah sat outside by the fire with Elaine. "I feel different," Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "For the first time, I'm not running away from my thoughts. I'm just letting them be. And I feel lighter." Elaine smiled. "That's the gift of silence, Sarah. It's not about eliminating the noise of the world. It's about finding the stillness within. When you allow your thoughts to come and go without attachment, you find a space of peace that was always there. It's like clearing the clouds from the sky to reveal the stars." Sarah looked up at the night sky, the stars twinkling brightly above. It was as if the universe had opened up before her, vast and serene. She understood now that silence was not about avoiding the world or running from her thoughts. It was about accepting everything as it was and finding peace in the present moment. The power of quieting the mind. As Sarah continued her retreat, she began to apply what she had learned. Back at work, she noticed that her mind no longer raced from task to task. Instead, she learned to focus on the present moment, to embrace each task as it came without the constant worry about what was next. When she felt overwhelmed, she took a few minutes to breathe deeply, to reconnect with the stillness within. Her relationships also began to change. With her husband, James, she found herself listening more deeply, no longer distracted by her own thoughts. She was present with him, truly hearing what he had to say. With her children, she found joy in the small moments, playing with them, laughing with them, without the pressure of needing to do more. Sarah had learned that the mind was like a busy street, filled with distractions and noise. But silence was the stillness between the thoughts, the space where true peace resided. By learning to quiet her mind, Sarah had found a peace that wasn't dependent on her circumstances, but on her ability to be present. The quiet mind. A new way of living. Returning home from the retreat, Sarah felt like a new person. The noise of her life was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She had learned to find peace in the present, in the simple act of being. She didn't need to chase perfection, nor did she need to control every aspect of her life. All she needed to do was breathe, to be aware, and to let the world unfold around her. Sarah now knew that silence was not an absence, it was the presence of peace. And as she carried this lesson forward, she knew that the gift of silence would always be there, waiting for her whenever she needed to find her way back to stillness. Part 5. The Ripple Effect, the Power of Compassion. Compassion is often seen as a quiet force, something gentle and unobtrusive, but its effects are far-reaching. Like a stone dropped into still water, it creates ripples that extend far beyond its point of origin. Compassion is not just about feeling sorry for someone else or giving to those in need. It is a profound understanding that all beings share in the same struggles and sufferings. When we open our hearts to others, we are not just alleviating their pain, we are healing our own. Tim, a man in his mid-50s, had lived much of his life without realizing the true power of compassion. He had always been busy, consumed by work, his goals, and his ambition. But despite his success, there was something missing. Tim had plenty of friends, colleagues, and family around him, but a deep feeling of loneliness lingered. He didn't know how to bridge the gap between himself and others. He was always giving, but he had never truly learned how to receive not just material things, but the connection, the warmth, and the presence of others. Tim's story begins with a chance encounter, a moment that would change his life and lead him to discover the transformative power of compassion. Tim's struggle, the barrier of isolation. Tim had spent most of his life in the corporate world, climbing the ladder of success. He was good at what he did, a lawyer by profession, and a respected one at that. But as his career flourished, his personal life began to fade into the background. He was so caught up in work that he lost touch with many of his friends and family members. His marriage, too, had started to suffer. His wife, Laura, had once been his closest confidant, but now they only exchanged pleasantries. Their conversations were about schedules, bills, and the kids' school events. The deeper connection they once shared seemed to have vanished. Despite all the outward success, Tim felt an emptiness inside. He was constantly busy, yet never fulfilled. He gave his time, his energy, and his resources to work and to others, but he never felt seen or understood. He had lost the ability to connect with himself, let alone others. One evening, after another long day in the office, Tim found himself walking home through the quiet streets of his neighborhood. He passed by a small park where he noticed an elderly woman sitting on a bench. She was alone, her hands folded in her lap, staring off into the distance. Something about her stillness caught Tim's attention, and without really thinking, he walked over and sat next to her. "Is everything okay?" Tim asked, genuinely curious. The woman turned to him with a soft smile, her eyes full of kindness. "I'm just waiting," she replied quietly. "Waiting for what?" Tim asked, feeling an odd sense of connection with this stranger. "For someone to see me," she said simply. "Just to see me, to truly notice me." Tim was taken aback. He had never met this woman before, and yet her words resonated deeply with him. In that moment, he realized that he, too, had been waiting for someone to truly see him, not as a successful lawyer, not as a provider, but as a human being. The compassionate encounter, a lesson in giving and receiving. The elderly woman introduced herself as Marjorie. She had lived in the neighborhood for years, but her family had long since moved away, and her friends were few. Tim listened as Marjorie shared her life story, her youth, her marriage, her children, and the many years she had spent caring for others. As she spoke, Tim couldn't help but notice how much warmth she exuded despite her age and solitude. She spoke not from a place of sadness but of acceptance. "I've learned that compassion is not about what we give," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. "It's about what we share and what we receive." We often think of compassion as a one-way street. We give to others to make them feel better. But real compassion is a two-way flow. It's not just about giving. It's about opening yourself to others and letting them in. It's about recognizing that we are all in this together. Tim sat in silence, absorbing her words. It was a simple lesson, but one that he had never truly understood before. He had always given to others his time, his money, his attention, but he had never allowed himself to fully receive. He had never opened his heart to others in a way that allowed true connection. Marjorie continued, "Compassion is the recognition that we are all interconnected. We are all human, all struggling in some way, all seeking love, acceptance, and peace. When you open yourself to another person, you allow their suffering, their joy, their experience to flow through you. And in return, you allow your own heart to soften. The ripple effect." Tim's transformation. Tim walked home that night with a new sense of awareness. He realized that he had been living in isolation, not because he didn't care, but because he had never allowed himself to be fully vulnerable with others. He had built walls around his heart, afraid to let anyone in. But Marjorie's words had opened something within him. He understood now that to experience true compassion, he needed to be willing to let go of his fear of being seen, truly seen. Over the next few weeks, Tim began to make small changes in his life. He reached out to old friends, took the time to listen to his wife, and allowed himself to be more present with his children. He stopped trying to fix everything and simply started being there, emotionally, physically, and mentally. One evening, as Tim sat with Laura after dinner, he shared his experience with her. "I've been so focused on doing for everyone, but I haven't been truly present. I haven't been open with you, with anyone. I'm realizing now that I need to receive as much as I give, to allow myself to be seen, to be truly seen." Laura looked at him, her eyes softening. "I've been waiting for you to see me too," she said, her voice quiet. "Not just as a wife or a mother, but as me, as someone who needs to feel seen too." In that moment, Tim understood the depth of their connection. Compassion wasn't just about giving. It was about being vulnerable, about allowing both sides of the relationship to flow freely. It was about mutual respect, understanding, and emotional intimacy. The power of compassion in action. Tim's journey didn't end there. As he continued to practice compassion, he noticed how his relationships began to change. His connection with his colleagues improved as he listened more and judged less. His bond with his children deepened as he spent more quality time with them, not as a provider, but as a present and engaged father. His marriage with Laura grew stronger as they both learned to support each other without expectation, without judgment. Tim realized that the true power of compassion lay not just in acts of kindness, but in the willingness to open one's heart. Compassion was not a task to be checked off, but a way of living, a continuous flow of energy that connected him to everyone around him. The more he gave and received compassion, the more he saw the ripple effect it created. His kindness inspired others to open their hearts as well. The simple act of being present, of truly listening, of showing care, created a chain reaction that spread far beyond Tim's immediate circle. His willingness to be vulnerable and open to others allowed him to experience a sense of interconnectedness that he had never felt before. The ripple effect continues. As the months went by, Tim continued his journey of compassionate living. He learned that compassion was not just about grand gestures or saving the world. It was about small, everyday moments of connection. It was in the way he looked at people, the way he listened, the way he offered his time and energy without expectation. One afternoon, as Tim was walking through the city, he passed a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk. The man looked up at him, his eyes filled with weariness. Tim stopped and sat down beside him. They didn't talk for long, but Tim shared a moment of silent connection with the man, a moment of recognition, of shared humanity. Tim didn't give him money or make promises, but he gave him something more valuable, his presence. He saw him, and in that moment the ripple effect of compassion continued to grow, spreading out into the world. The ripple effect of compassion never truly stops. It extends outwards, touching everyone it encounters, creating a chain of kindness and understanding that continues to expand. Through Tim's story, we see that true compassion begins with opening our hearts to others, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, and embracing the interconnectedness of all beings. Compassion is a gift that we give not just to others but to ourselves. It transforms us, heals us, and opens us to the beauty of the world around us. And when we allow ourselves to be part of that flow, when we give and receive freely, we find that we are not just helping others, but we are healing ourselves in the process. Tim's journey teaches us that the power of compassion lies in its simplicity. It's not about grand gestures or acts of heroism. It's about being present, being open, and allowing the love we have to flow freely, creating ripples that extend far beyond what we can see. Compassion is the force that connects us all, a force that, when embraced, has the power to transform the world. Part 6. The Garden of Acceptance, Letting Go of Expectations. The weight of unmet expectations. The weight of expectation can be suffocating. It is a silent, invisible force that lingers over us, shaping our choices, our actions, and even our identities. We carry it with us every day, a heavy load we often don't even realize we're bearing. We expect things to go a certain way, a job promotion, a relationship that thrives, a life that meets the standards we've set. And when these expectations are not met, we are left with a sense of emptiness, frustration, and disappointment. Emily, a successful woman in her early 30s, had spent much of her life striving for perfection. She had been taught from a young age that success meant meeting high expectations, that her worth was tied to her achievements, her performance, and the approval of others. But the constant pursuit of these expectations had taken a toll on her. She was successful by all outward standards, but inside she felt exhausted, unfulfilled, and disconnected from herself. Emily's struggle. Living in the shadow of expectations. Emily had always been driven. A top student in school, a rising star at her company, and an overachiever in every sense of the word, she had built a life that many would envy. But in the process, she had lost touch with what truly mattered. The relentless pursuit of success had led her to neglect her emotional well-being, her personal relationships, and most importantly, her own happiness. At work, Emily was the go-to person, the one everyone relied on. She excelled at everything she did, but it never seemed to be enough. She constantly sought validation from her boss, her colleagues, and even from herself. Every compliment she received felt temporary, as if it didn't quite fill the void inside her. She was always looking ahead, striving for the next accomplishment, the next milestone. But the deeper she went, the emptier she felt. At home, Emily's relationship with her partner, Jake, had begun to deteriorate. They barely spoke anymore, only exchanging hurried greetings and goodbyes. She was so focused on her career and her expectations of herself that she had neglected her personal life. She couldn't remember the last time she had truly spent quality time with Jake, without the constant pressure of deadlines and goals hanging over her head. Her body was also showing signs of strain. She had trouble sleeping, her energy was low, and her mind was constantly racing. No matter how many accomplishments she achieved, she couldn't escape the feeling that something was missing. The call to the garden. A moment of stillness. One weekend, Emily's life took an unexpected turn. Her friend, Lily, whom she had known since childhood, invited her to join a weekend retreat at a quiet garden just outside the city. The retreat was centered around mindfulness, acceptance, and letting go of expectations. Emily was skeptical at first. She didn't have time for a retreat. She had work to do, projects to finish. But something inside her whispered that she needed this, that she needed to reconnect with herself and step away from the chaos. Emily arrived at the retreat with a sense of hesitation, not fully understanding what to expect. The garden was nestled in the heart of a serene valley, surrounded by lush greenery, wildflowers, and the soft sounds of nature. As Emily entered the garden, she immediately felt a sense of peace, a stillness that seemed to embrace her. The air was crisp and clean, the earth beneath her feet felt solid, and the world around her seemed to slow down. She met the retreat leader, a wise woman named Myra, who greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome, Emily," Myra said softly. You are exactly where you need to be. The retreat was simple. There were no elaborate schedules, no strict rules, just a series of mindful activities designed to help participants reconnect with themselves and let go of their burdens. Emily wasn't sure what to expect, but as she spent time in the garden, she felt the tension in her body begin to melt away. The lesson of the garden: embracing imperfection. One morning, after a quiet meditation session, Myra gathered the group in a circle in the middle of the garden. "Look around you," she said, gesturing to the flowers, the trees, and the plants that surrounded them. "Do you see perfection?" Emily looked around. The garden was beautiful, but it wasn't perfect. The flowers weren't all in full bloom. Some were wilting, others were just starting to grow. The trees had knots in their trunks and the grass was uneven. Myra smiled as she saw Emily's thoughts reflected in her eyes. Perfection does not exist in nature. Everything is constantly changing, growing, and evolving. Just like these plants, we too are works in progress. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to be present. The lesson struck Emily deeply. She had spent so much of her life chasing perfection in her career, her relationships, and even in her own self-image. But here, in this peaceful garden, she realized that perfection was an illusion. It was the acceptance of imperfection that brought true peace. She didn't have to be perfect. She just had to be herself, to allow herself to grow, to change, and to evolve at her own pace. "Let go of the expectations you've placed on yourself," Myra continued. "Let go of the pressure to be perfect. Embrace your imperfections, your flaws, your humanity. Only then will you find true peace." The garden of acceptance. A journey of letting go. As the retreat continued, Emily spent more time in the garden, reflecting on the lessons she was learning. She took long walks among the flowers, sat under the shade of the trees, and meditated by the tranquil pond. Each moment in the garden was a reminder to let go, to release the expectations she had placed on herself, and to accept herself as she was. One afternoon, Emily found herself sitting on a stone bench near the edge of the garden. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape. She closed her eyes, allowing the peacefulness of the moment to wash over her. She realized that for the first time in years, she was truly present. She wasn't thinking about the future or the past. She was simply here in this moment with no expectations. As she sat there, a gentle breeze blew through the garden, carrying the scent of the flowers with it. Emily felt a deep sense of connection to everything around her, the earth, the trees, the air. It was as if she was a part of this garden, growing alongside the plants, evolving in her own way, in her own time. The release. Freedom in letting go. That evening, during the final group meditation session, Myra guided the group through a visualization exercise. "Imagine," she said, "that you are holding a heavy burden, a rock, a weight, something that is holding you back. Feel its heaviness in your hands, its weight pulling you down." Emily closed her eyes and imagined a large, jagged stone in her hands. It was heavy, cold, and rough. It represented all of the expectations she had placed on herself, the pressure to succeed, to be perfect, to meet the needs of everyone around her. The weight of this stone felt suffocating. "Now imagine," Myra continued, "that you are standing by a river. You can feel the cool breeze on your face, the sound of the water flowing gently beside you. In your hands, you hold the stone. And now you can choose to let it go. Release the burden. Allow the stone to fall into the river where it will be carried away by the current." Emily pictured herself standing by the river, holding the stone. She took a deep breath and, with a sense of surrender, released the stone into the flowing water. As it sank into the river, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. The burden was gone. She no longer had to carry the weight of unmet expectations, the pressure to be perfect. She was free. The Garden of Acceptance, a new beginning. The retreat ended, but Emily knew that her journey was just beginning. She had learned to let go of the expectations that had controlled her life for so long. She had learned that true peace didn't come from striving for perfection, but from accepting herself as she was, flaws, imperfections, and all. When she returned home, she felt lighter. Her relationship with Jake began to improve as she became more present with him, no longer burdened by the weight of unmet expectations. At work, she stopped striving for perfection and started focusing on the joy of doing what she loved. She still had goals, but they were no longer the driving force in her life. Emily's life was still a work in progress, but now she understood that the journey wasn't about being perfect. It was about embracing the beauty of imperfection, about accepting the ebb and flow of life with grace. The lessons Emily learned in the garden became a part of her. She carried them with her wherever she went, and whenever she felt overwhelmed, she would return to the garden within her heart, the place of acceptance, of peace, and of release. We are all like gardens, constantly growing, changing, and evolving. We don't need to meet unrealistic expectations or chase after perfection. We simply need to let go of the pressure to be something we're not and embrace the beauty of who we are right now. Like the garden, we are works in progress, beautiful in our imperfections. Just as Emily learned to let go of the stone and find peace, so too can we release the burdens we carry and allow ourselves to bloom exactly as we are, in our own time. The garden of acceptance is always within us, waiting to guide us back to peace. Part 7. The Path of the Mindful Warrior, Courage in Facing Fear. The courage to face what lies within. Fear is a universal emotion. It is something that each of us experiences, though we often try to avoid or suppress it. We fear failure, rejection, loneliness, pain, and loss. We fear the unknown, the future, and sometimes we even fear ourselves. Fear can paralyze us, making us hesitant to take risks, pursue our dreams, or face the challenges that life inevitably presents. But what if fear didn't have to control us? What if we could learn to face our fears with courage, not through force, but through mindfulness and acceptance? The true warrior in Buddhist teachings is not the one who fights with weapons, but the one who faces their fears with awareness, patience, and compassion. This path requires not the absence of fear, but the courage to sit with it, understand it, and transform it. Jack, a man who had once been driven by fear, was about to learn this truth the hard way. His life had been a constant battle with fear, fear of failure, fear of judgment, and perhaps most hauntingly, fear of the unknown. But everything changed one day when he met a Buddhist monk who would teach him that true courage lies not in fighting fear, but in facing it with mindfulness and grace. Jack's story, The Battle Within. Jack had always been an achiever. He was a respected business consultant, known for his ability to solve complex problems and handle high-stress situations. On the surface, Jack appeared confident, composed, and in control. But beneath the surface, he was filled with fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, and fear of losing the control that had defined his life. At work, Jack was the go-to person, the one people relied on when things went wrong. He prided himself on his ability to take on challenges, but inside, he was constantly battling his own insecurities. Each decision he made, every presentation he gave, was met with a wave of anxiety. What if I fail? What if they don't like my ideas? What if I'm not as good as they think I am? These thoughts would flood his mind at all hours of the day, but Jack had learned to bury them. He pushed through the fear, hiding it behind a mask of professionalism and control. But the fear was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. And it was beginning to take its toll. Jack's relationships were suffering. He avoided close connections because he was afraid of being vulnerable. He hid his true feelings from his colleagues and even from his wife, Sarah, afraid that if he revealed his true self, he would be judged. The anxiety weighed on him like an invisible burden, and despite his outward success, he felt empty inside. It wasn't until a chance encounter with a Buddhist monk on a trip to a remote mountain village that Jack would learn that the true warrior is one who confronts their inner fears with courage and mindfulness. The meeting with the monk, a lesson in true courage. The village where Jack had found himself was small and peaceful, surrounded by lush forests and rolling hills. He had traveled there for a business retreat, but after the first day of meetings, he felt an overwhelming urge to explore. The beauty of the natural surroundings called to him, and he found himself wandering through the village streets, seeking some form of peace. That's when he encountered the monk. The man was sitting in front of a modest temple, his eyes closed in meditation, a serene smile on his face. There was something about his presence that drew Jack in. For reasons Jack couldn't explain, he felt compelled to speak to him. "Excuse me," Jack said softly, not wanting to disturb the monk's peace. "I've been struggling with something with fear." "How do you find peace with something like that?" The monk opened his eyes slowly and regarded Jack with a calm, understanding gaze. "Fear is not an enemy to be defeated, my friend. It is a teacher. The true warrior does not fight their fear, they embrace it, learn from it, and let it go." Jack was confused. But how do you fight something like fear? How do you face it? The monk smiled gently. "You do not fight it, you sit with it. You observe it without judgment. Fear is a natural part of being human, but it does not have to control you. When you acknowledge it, you create space for it to pass through you rather than holding on to it. The lesson of mindfulness, facing fear with awareness." The monk continued, "In our practice of mindfulness, we learn to be present with whatever arises, thoughts, feelings, fears. Instead of running from them or suppressing them, we meet them with openness and acceptance. Fear, like all emotions, is impermanent. It comes and goes. But when we fight it, when we resist it, it only grows stronger." Jack listened intently, the monk's words resonating deeply within him. For the first time, he realized that his struggle with fear was not about overcoming it, but about understanding it. He had spent so much time running from his fears, avoiding them, that they had only gained more power over him. The monk stood up and gestured for Jack to follow him. They walked together in silence through the village, and the monk pointed out the beauty of the world around them. The flowing river, the birds in the sky, the tall trees that reached towards the heavens. "The path of the mindful warrior is one of presence," the monk explained. "To face fear with courage is not to eliminate it, but to be present with it. When you are present, fear loses its hold over you. It is no longer something to be feared, but something to be understood. Just as the river flows, so too do your fears. They will pass, but you must allow them to flow, not dam them up." The practice. Sitting with fear. The monk led Jack to a quiet spot by the river where they sat on a large rock. "Now we practice," the monk said. "Sit here with your fear. Do not try to push it away or pretend it does not exist. Allow it to come to you. Acknowledge it, feel it, and then release it." At first, Jack found it difficult to sit still. His thoughts raced, his heart pounded, and the fear that had been bubbling beneath the surface surfaced in full force. What if I fail? What if I can't do this? But instead of running from these thoughts, Jack simply sat with them. He observed the fear, noticing the way it made his chest tighten, the way his thoughts spiraled. He didn't try to change it. He didn't try to fight it. He just allowed it to be there. And then, slowly, something shifted. As Jack continued to sit, his breath slowed, his heart calmed, and the fear began to dissipate. It didn't vanish entirely, but it lost its power over him. For the first time in his life, he felt at peace with his fear. the courage to live mindfully. Over the following days, Jack practiced the teachings of the monk. He learned that fear, like any emotion, was a part of the human experience. But he also learned that he didn't have to let fear control him. He could sit with it, acknowledge it, and allow it to pass. And in doing so, he found a new kind of courage, the courage to live mindfully, the courage to be present with himself and with the world around him. When Jack returned home, he applied the lessons he had learned. At work, he stopped trying to control every outcome and instead focused on being present in each moment. When fear arose, he didn't run from it. He sat with it, observed it, and allowed it to pass. He stopped worrying about the future and started embracing the present. His relationships improved as well. With his wife, Sarah, he was more open and vulnerable. He shared his fears with her, not as a sign of weakness, but as an act of strength. He realized that true courage was not in fighting fear, but in facing it with compassion and acceptance. The true warrior. Courage in every moment. Jack's journey had only just begun, but he had learned a powerful lesson. The true warrior is not one who fights, but one who faces their fears with courage, mindfulness, and compassion. In the battle between fear and peace, the warrior knows that the path to victory lies in embracing the fear, not in defeating it. Jack was no longer a slave to his fears. He had learned to sit with them, to observe them, and to let them go. And in doing so, he had found the greatest victory of all, the victory of peace within himself. The path of the mindful warrior. The path of the mindful warrior is a path of courage, not the courage to fight, but the courage to be present. By facing our fears with awareness, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. We learn that fear is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced, not with force, but with mindfulness. When we face fear with courage, we free ourselves from its grip. We become the warriors of our own lives, not by defeating our fears, but by learning to live alongside them with peace and acceptance. Part 8. The Mirror of Truth, Understanding the Self. The Illusion of the Self. Who are we really? This question, though seemingly simple, has baffled great philosophers, spiritual leaders, and everyday people alike. We define ourselves by our jobs, our relationships, our possessions, our past experiences, and the roles we play in life. But beneath these layers, what is the true self? The Buddha taught that the self, as we often perceive it, is an illusion. It is not a fixed entity but a fluid, ever-changing collection of thoughts, emotions, and experiences. In modern society, we often measure ourselves by external standards. We are judged by our accomplishments, our status, and our outward appearance. But this outward self is not the true self. It is merely a reflection of our ego, our conditioned mind. The journey of understanding the self is a journey of peeling away these layers, of looking beyond the surface to discover the truth of who we are. Emily, who had spent much of her life measuring her worth by external expectations, was about to embark on this journey of self-discovery. Her pursuit of perfection and validation from others had left her disconnected from her true essence. But as she began to explore her inner world, she would come to understand that the key to true freedom and peace lay not in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. Emily's struggle. Living through the mask. Emily had always been a high achiever. She excelled in school, in her career, and in her social life. She was the picture of success, beautiful, smart, and driven. But despite her accomplishments, Emily felt like she was living a life that didn't fully belong to her. She was constantly trying to meet the expectations of others, her parents, her friends, her colleagues, and even her partner. The pressure to maintain this image of success was overwhelming. She had become so wrapped up in the roles she played that she had lost sight of who she really was. She wore a mask of confidence, always striving to meet the expectations placed upon her. But behind that mask, she felt empty, disconnected, and uncertain. She often asked herself, is this who I really am? Or is this just the person I've been told to be? Emily's external life seemed perfect, but internally she felt a deep void. She had everything she thought she wanted, a successful career, a loving partner, and a beautiful home, but none of it brought her lasting happiness. Her worth, she realized, had become so tied to external validation that she had forgotten how to simply be herself. The encounter with the reflection, a moment of clarity. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, Emily found herself walking through the city. She was lost in thought, her mind filled with worries and self-doubt. She had been pushing herself to achieve more and more, but it never felt like enough. She passed by a small art gallery, and for reasons she couldn't explain, decided to step inside. The gallery was quiet, almost empty, except for a few people admiring the artwork. Emily wandered through the rooms, taking in the paintings and sculptures, but one piece in particular caught her eye. It was a large, abstract mirror, its surface distorted and uneven, reflecting the room in a way that felt both strange and beautiful. The reflection was not clear. It seemed to shift and change with every movement, creating an illusion of depth and mystery. Emily stood in front of the mirror for what felt like an eternity, mesmerized by the way it reflected her image. It wasn't a perfect reflection. It was warped, fragmented, and incomplete. And yet, in that distorted image, she saw herself more clearly than she ever had before. For the first time, she recognized that the image she had been carrying, the confident, successful woman who wore a mask of perfection, was not the true reflection of who she was. It was just a surface layer, a projection of her ego. The lesson: the self is not a fixed identity. As Emily stood before the mirror, something inside her began to shift. The distorted image in the mirror symbolized the layers she had built around herself, the expectations, the roles, and the personas she had created to fit into the world. These were not her true self. They were masks she wore to protect herself from vulnerability, to meet the expectations of others. The lesson became clear. The self is not a fixed identity. It is not defined by external accomplishments or the roles we play in society. The true self is deeper than that. It is the awareness behind the image, the consciousness that observes the thoughts and emotions without attaching to them. It is fluid, ever-changing, and not bound by the limitations of our ego. Emily remembered the teachings of the Buddha, who spoke of the impermanence of the self. The self is like a river. It flows, it changes, and it is not the same from one moment to the next. We are not the same person we were yesterday, and we will not be the same person tomorrow. The true self is not something we can grasp or define. It is something we must experience in the present moment, without attachment to past identities or future expectations. The path of self-discovery, letting go of the mask. Over the following weeks, Emily began to explore this new understanding of the self. She started by letting go of the masks she had been wearing. She stopped pretending to be the perfect career woman, the perfect partner, and the perfect daughter. Instead, she allowed herself to be vulnerable, to be honest with herself and others about her struggles, her fears, and her insecurities. The more she practiced letting go of her attachments to external validation, the more she felt at peace. She realized that her worth was not dependent on how others saw her, but on her own ability to accept and love herself. The true Emily was not the woman who had sought perfection, but the one who could embrace her flaws, her imperfections, and her humanity. In her relationship with Jake, Emily began to open up more, sharing her true feelings and fears with him. She no longer felt the need to hide behind a mask of perfection. She was no longer afraid of being seen for who she truly was, not as the successful, high-achieving woman, but as a human being with emotions, vulnerabilities, and dreams. The mirror of truth, seeing ourselves as we are. One evening, Emily sat alone in her apartment, reflecting on her journey. She had come a long way from the woman who had sought validation from others, from the woman who had worn a mask to protect herself from rejection. She now understood that true peace came from within, from accepting herself as she was, not as she thought she should be, but as she truly was. The mirror had shown her the truth, that the self is not a fixed identity, but a fluid, ever-changing essence. She was not defined by her past accomplishments, her successes, or her failures. She was simply a person, a human being, living in the present moment. And in that present moment, she was enough. As Emily continued on her journey of self-discovery, she found that the more she let go of her attachments to external expectations, the more she felt at home within herself. She no longer needed the approval of others to feel worthy. She had learned to see herself as she truly was, a reflection of the universe, ever-changing, ever-evolving, and infinitely beautiful in her imperfection. The liberation of self-acceptance. The journey to understanding the self is not an easy one. It requires us to let go of the stories we tell ourselves, the roles we play, and the expectations we place on ourselves. But in this process of letting go, we find freedom, the freedom to simply be, without needing to be anything other than ourselves. Emily had learned that the true self is not something we can grasp or define. It is not the mask we wear, nor the roles we play. It is the awareness behind it all, the consciousness that observes, accepts, and loves. When we let go of our attachment to external validation and expectations, we discover a deep sense of peace that comes from within. The mirror of truth had shown Emily that she was not defined by the image in the mirror, but by the essence of who she was. And in that essence, she found her true beauty, her true worth, and her true self. The freedom of self-acceptance. Understanding the self is not about seeking perfection. It is about embracing who we truly are. It is about letting go of the roles and masks we wear, and allowing ourselves to be seen for who we are, flawed, imperfect, and yet perfectly human. When we let go of our attachment to external validation and expectations, we find the freedom to live authentically, to love ourselves without conditions, and to be at peace with who we are. As Emily discovered, the path to self-understanding is a journey of acceptance, not of striving for perfection, but of embracing imperfection. And in this acceptance, we find the freedom to live authentically, to be fully present in our lives, and to love ourselves without condition. The journey of self-discovery is not about becoming someone else, but about remembering who we truly are, the awareness that observes, the consciousness that is always present, and the essence that is timeless and infinite. The mirror of truth reflects back to us the beauty of our true selves. When we learn to see ourselves as we truly are, without judgment or attachment, we find the peace and freedom that come with self-acceptance. And in this freedom, we can finally live our lives fully, authentically, and with love. Part 9. The Circle of Life, Embracing Change. The fear of change. Change is inevitable. It's the one constant in life. Yet despite its inevitability, many of us fear it. We resist change, holding on to the familiar even when it no longer serves us. We fear the unknown, the uncertainty, and the loss of what we think we know. Change, for most, is a disruption, a challenge to our comfort zone. We cling to what's familiar because it gives us a sense of control, a sense of security. But in doing so, we often limit ourselves, missing out on the opportunities that change can bring. The truth is that embracing change is the key to growth. It is through change that we evolve, discover new possibilities, and ultimately become more connected to the flow of life. Samuel, a man in his late 50s, had spent most of his life avoiding change. He was a man of routine, of stability. He worked the same job for over 30 years, lived in the same house, and followed the same daily routine. To Samuel, life was predictable, safe, and secure. But as he grew older, he began to notice something unsettling, a feeling of stagnation. Despite all his achievements and his steady life, something inside him felt unfulfilled. His life was anchored in routine, and the fear of what might lie beyond it kept him from seeking out the changes that could bring him the peace and satisfaction he longed for. It wasn't until one fateful moment that Samuel was forced to confront the truth about change, that it was not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. Samuel's story. The comfort of routine. Samuel had always prided himself on being a man of consistency. He was reliable, dependable, and never one to rock the boat. His job at a well-established company in his hometown had given him a comfortable life, but in recent years, Samuel began to feel disconnected from his own sense of purpose. His daily routine was so predictable that he could almost live it on autopilot. Each day felt like a repeat of the one before. Despite his outward success, Samuel was plagued by a feeling of dissatisfaction. He had a good job, a stable income, and a family who loved him. But the constant repetition, the lack of change, left him feeling empty. He had built a life of security, but that security had come at the cost of excitement and adventure. Samuel's fear of change was rooted in the belief that change would disrupt his carefully constructed world. He feared that if he stepped out of his comfort zone, he might lose everything he had worked for. What if he failed? What if he couldn't handle the uncertainty? But life has a way of forcing change upon us, whether we are ready or not. And for Samuel, that change came in the form of an unexpected health scare. The turning point. The diagnosis. It was one Thursday afternoon when Samuel received a call from his doctor. His routine checkup had uncovered something troubling. The doctor informed him that he had high blood pressure, and there were signs that his heart was under stress. While not immediately life-threatening, it was a wake-up call. A stark reminder that the stability he had built his life around could no longer protect him from the forces of change that were taking place inside his body. This diagnosis shook Samuel to his core. He had always thought of himself as in control, but in that moment he realized just how fragile life could be. His body was changing, and with it, his need to change as well. Samuel had spent decades avoiding the discomfort of change, but now his health was demanding that he take a hard look at his life and make some real changes. For weeks, Samuel struggled with the news. He felt angry, resistant, and afraid. He had spent so many years living the way he always had, and the idea of making significant changes, changing his lifestyle, his diet, his mindset felt overwhelming. How could he change at his age? How could he break free from the comfortable, predictable life he had built? The encounter with the elder, embracing the flow. One day, as Samuel sat in the park near his home, reflecting on his diagnosis, he met an elderly man named Mr. Lin. Mr. Lin was sitting alone on a bench, watching the children play and the birds fly overhead. He had an air of peace about him, a quiet contentment that Samuel envied. Mr. Lin noticed Samuel sitting nearby and struck up a conversation. "You seem troubled, my friend," he said gently. Samuel hesitated, but then he found himself sharing his thoughts. "I've lived a good life, a stable life," Samuel said. "But now it feels like everything is falling apart. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid of what might happen if I change. What if it makes things worse?" Mr. Lin smiled softly. "Change is not something to fear," he said. "It is the natural flow of life. Think of a river. A river does not fear the changes it goes through. It flows, it moves, it adapts. The rocks and obstacles in its path don't stop it, they shape it. Without change, the river would stagnate. Without change, life would be the same forever, and that would be a death of its own. Samuel listened intently, his mind opening to a new perspective. "But I've worked so hard to build a stable life," he said. "What if I lose it all if I make a change?" Mr. Lin's eyes sparkled with wisdom. "You are not losing what you have. You are opening yourself to something new. You don't have to abandon what you've built. You just need to allow it to evolve with you. Life is not meant to be stagnant. The beauty of life is in its impermanence, in its constant change. Embrace it, and you will find new opportunities, new ways of being." The lesson: embracing change with grace. Mr. Lin's words stayed with Samuel long after their conversation ended. Over the following weeks, he began to reconsider his life and the way he had been living. The fear of change had kept him from growing, from evolving, but now he realized that change wasn't something to resist. It was something to flow with, like a river moving through its natural course. Samuel started making small changes in his life. He began walking every morning, taking time to care for his health. He changed his diet, incorporating more fresh fruits and vegetables, and he made a conscious effort to reduce his stress by practicing mindfulness and meditation. At work, he stopped chasing after the next promotion and started focusing on mentoring younger colleagues, passing on his knowledge and experience. He found fulfillment in helping others grow, realizing that he didn't have to be at the top to make a difference. His relationship with his wife, Miriam, also began to improve. They started spending more time together, rediscovering the joy of simple activities like cooking dinner together, taking walks in the park, and talking about their dreams and fears. The change was not always easy, but with each step, Samuel felt a renewed sense of peace. The flow of life, becoming one with change. As Samuel continued to embrace change, he began to see that life was not about clinging to what he thought he knew. It was about letting go, being open to the unknown, and trusting the process of life. Just like the river, he needed to allow himself to flow, to adapt, and to grow. The changes Samuel made in his life did not happen overnight, but with each passing day, he felt a deeper sense of connection to himself and the world around him. He learned that true peace does not come from resisting change but from accepting it. Life, like the river, moves forward, and by embracing the flow, we find our true path. The courage to live fully. The final lesson Samuel learned was that true courage is not about avoiding change but about facing it head-on. It's about trusting the process of life, even when the future is uncertain. Life will always change, but it is through change that we discover our true potential, our true selves. Samuel no longer feared the future. He had learned to embrace the unknown, to flow with life's changes, and to trust that every change, no matter how difficult, brought with it the possibility of growth. In doing so, he had found peace, a peace that comes not from avoiding change, but from embracing it with an open heart. The circle of life. Change is the one thing we can count on in life. It is inevitable, it is necessary, and it is beautiful. Like a river that flows endlessly, life too flows through its seasons of growth, challenge, and renewal. The key to finding peace is not in resisting change but in embracing it. When we allow ourselves to flow with the current, we discover new possibilities, new opportunities, and a deeper connection to the world around us. Samuel's journey teaches us that change is not something to fear. It is something to welcome. By embracing change, we unlock our true potential and live fully in the present moment. And in this acceptance, we find the peace we seek, not in avoiding life's challenges, but in meeting them with an open heart. Life is a river, ever changing, ever flowing, and it is only by letting go and flowing with it that we truly live. Part 10. The sacred pause, finding peace in the present moment. The rush of life. In our fast-paced world, where time seems to slip through our fingers and every moment feels like a race against the clock, it's easy to forget the power of simply being. We are constantly running from one task to the next, from one responsibility to another. We fill our days with the busyness of life, thinking that productivity and constant motion are the keys to success and happiness. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if the key to true peace lies not in doing more, but in doing less? What if the greatest gift we can give ourselves is to stop running, to pause, and to be present in the moment? The sacred pause, the space between thoughts and actions, holds a profound power, the power to reconnect us to our inner peace, to our purpose, and to the present moment. John, a man in his early 40s, was about to discover the life-changing magic of this pause. His life had been one of constant striving, a successful career, a busy family life, and a never-ending list of to-dos. But somewhere along the way, he had lost touch with himself. The more he did, the more disconnected he felt. The idea of slowing down, of sitting still, seemed impossible. But as he would soon learn, the pause was not a sign of weakness but of strength. It was a portal to peace, a peace that existed within him all along, waiting to be rediscovered. John's story. The endless rush. John's life had always been about moving forward. He was a father, a husband, a businessman, a man who wore many hats and prided himself on his ability to juggle them all. He woke up early every morning, checked his emails, and immediately began his day. His schedule was packed from sunrise to sunset, and any free time was spent catching up on tasks or running errands. On the surface, John had everything: a loving wife, 2 beautiful children, and a successful career. But internally, he felt overwhelmed. The constant pressure to keep up, to achieve, and to meet everyone's expectations had taken its toll on him. He had become a machine, operating on autopilot, moving from one task to the next without ever truly stopping to breathe. At night, when John finally sat down to relax, his mind continued to race. He thought about work, about his family's needs, about everything he had to do the next day. His thoughts were a whirlwind, never quiet, never still. He longed for peace, but he didn't know how to find it. He didn't know how to stop the constant rush. One day, after a particularly stressful week, John found himself in the park, walking with no destination in mind. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the trees and the grass. The world around him seemed to slow down, but his mind was still spinning. He was so used to rushing, so used to doing, that he didn't know how to stop. The encounter. A moment of stillness. As John walked through the park, he noticed an elderly woman sitting on a bench, looking out at the sunset. Her face was calm, serene even, and she seemed to be completely at peace with the world around her. John had seen her before, sitting in the same spot day after day, but he had never stopped to speak to her. Today, something about her presence intrigued him. Without thinking, John sat down next to her. She turned to him with a gentle smile, as if she had been waiting for him to come. "You seem troubled," she said softly, her voice calm and warm. John sighed, feeling the weight of his exhaustion. "I feel like I'm always rushing. There's so much to do, so many things on my mind. I don't know how to stop. I can't even remember the last time I truly felt at peace." The elderly woman nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I understand," she said. "We are all so caught up in the rush of life and the endless doing. But peace, true peace, does not come from doing more. It comes from being." John looked at her, confused. Being. But how can I just be when there's so much to do? She smiled gently, her eyes sparkling with wisdom. The sacred pause is the moment between doing and being. It is the space where you allow yourself to simply exist, without the pressure to perform, without the weight of expectations. It is in this space that you reconnect with your true self. The lesson, the power of the pause. The elderly woman continued, when you stop and take a breath, when you allow yourself to simply be, you open the door to peace. In this moment of stillness, you can hear the quiet voice within you, the voice of your soul. This voice speaks of love, of connection, of truth. But if you are constantly rushing, constantly thinking, you cannot hear it. John felt a deep sense of calm wash over him as the woman spoke. It was as if her words were unlocking something inside of him, something he had long buried. He realized that he had spent so much time trying to achieve, to get things done, that he had forgotten how to just be. He had lost touch with the quiet, peaceful part of himself that existed beneath the constant noise of his thoughts. The woman looked at him with compassion. The sacred pause is not about doing nothing. It is about being present with what is. It is about embracing the moment without judgment, without expectation. It is in the pause that you find clarity. It is in the pause that you reconnect with your true self. John sat in silence, letting her words sink in. He realized that all of the stress, all of the busyness, had come from his attachment to the idea of success and achievement. He had been so focused on doing that he had forgotten how to be. The pause was not something to fear or avoid. It was something to welcome, something to cultivate. The practice, finding peace in the present moment. The next day, John decided to practice the sacred pause. He woke up early, as usual, but instead of diving straight into his to-do list, he took a few moments to simply breathe. He sat in silence, focusing on his breath, allowing himself to be fully present in the moment. At first, his mind raced with thoughts, but he didn't judge them. He simply observed them, let them pass, and returned to his breath. Throughout the day, John made small pauses. He took a moment to pause before responding to an email, to pause before reacting to a situation at work. These pauses were brief, but they allowed him to center himself, to reconnect with the present moment. At home, John shared his experience with his wife, Sarah. "I've been trying something new," he said. "Instead of rushing through everything, I've been taking moments to pause, just to breathe and be present. And it's been life-changing." Sarah smiled, proud of him. "That sounds wonderful. I think we both could use more of that. I've noticed you seem more relaxed lately." John realized that these small pauses were not just helping him find peace in his own life, but were also improving his relationships. By being present, truly present, with Sarah and their children, he was able to connect with them in a deeper, more meaningful way. He wasn't just physically there, he was emotionally and mentally present as well. The sacred pause. A new way of living. As weeks went by, John continued to incorporate the sacred pause into his daily routine. He found that the more he practiced stillness, the more he felt connected to himself and to the world around him. The constant rush of life no longer controlled him. He had learned to slow down, to appreciate the present moment, and to find peace in the pause. The sacred pause had become more than just a practice. It had become a way of life. John no longer felt overwhelmed by the endless demands of life. He had learned that peace wasn't something to chase, it was something to embrace in the present moment. The gift of the pause. True peace. In the years that followed, John continued to live with the lessons of the sacred pause. He found that the more he embraced stillness, the more peace he found within himself. The pause had taught him that life was not about achieving or accumulating, but about being present in each moment, fully engaged and connected. The sacred pause was not a moment of inaction. It was a moment of mindfulness, of awareness. It was the space where life could be experienced in its fullness, without the distractions of the past or the future. And in this space, John found the true peace he had been seeking all along. The sacred pause within us all. The sacred pause is a gift we all have access to. It is a simple yet powerful tool that can transform our lives, allowing us to reconnect with our true selves, to find peace in the present moment, and to live with intention and mindfulness. The pause is not about doing nothing, but about being present, being aware, and being at peace with the flow of life. In a world that constantly urges us to do more, be more, and achieve more, the sacred pause reminds us that we already have everything we need. We just need to take a moment to stop, breathe, and be present. And in that moment, we will find the peace that has always been within us. Life is not about rushing. It is about being fully present, fully alive in each and every moment. The sacred pause is the doorway to this peace. It is the key to living with presence, with intention, and with a heart open to the beauty of life. The journey of self-discovery and inner peace is not a simple one. It is a winding road, often marked by struggles, doubts, and moments of intense discomfort. But it is also a journey of profound transformation, where each lesson learned, each challenge faced, and each fear overcome brings us closer to the truth of who we are. Throughout the stories of the characters we have followed, Miles, Lily, Jack, Sarah, Tim, Emily, and Samuel, we have seen different aspects of the human experience. We have witnessed the weight of overthinking, the fear of imperfection, the burden of unmet expectations, and the disconnection from the self. Yet, we have also seen the power of mindfulness, compassion, and acceptance in transforming these struggles into stepping stones toward peace and fulfillment. Each character's story is a reflection of the universal journey we all undertake. The journey to find peace within ourselves amidst the noise, the chaos, and the endless demands of the world. But in every story, there is a pivotal moment. A moment when the character recognizes that true peace does not come from external circumstances, but from within. It is the realization that peace is not something we chase, but something we cultivate through presence, mindfulness, and self-acceptance. The struggle with overthinking, Miles' lesson of the present moment. Miles' journey taught us about the paralyzing effect of overthinking and the power of stillness. He was consumed by the endless worries about the future, the past, and his worth. His life was defined by his constant striving for approval, and in that struggle, he lost touch with the present moment. But when he learned to embrace the stillness, when he allowed himself to be present and not constantly chase the next worry, he began to experience peace. The pebble the monk handed him became a symbol of this awareness, a reminder that peace is not something we have to fight for, but something we find when we stop running. This lesson, perhaps, is the most powerful. We are not our thoughts. Our thoughts, no matter how loud or persistent, are not who we truly are. We are the awareness that can observe these thoughts. By learning to let go of the endless cycle of worry, we create space for peace. The fear of imperfection, Lily's acceptance of her creativity. Lily's story is one of perfectionism, a desire to control every detail, every stroke of the brush. Her fear of imperfection held her back, not only in her art but in life itself. She thought she had to be perfect to be worthy of love and success. But when she encountered the Zen master, she learned that perfection is an illusion, and true beauty lies in embracing imperfection. Her journey teaches us that our flaws and imperfections are not something to hide or fix. They are a part of who we are, and they hold their own beauty. In her art, in her life, she learned to stop striving for something that was never meant to be. She learned to create freely, to embrace the process, and to allow things to unfold naturally. Embracing imperfection is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. It is the courage to be yourself, exactly as you are, without the need for validation or approval. When we stop chasing an ideal, we make space for authenticity, for creativity, and for true peace. The burden of expectations. Jack's lesson in mindful courage. Jack's struggle was one of fear, the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, and the fear of not being enough. His life was defined by his need to be in control, and in that need, he was imprisoned by his own mind. But when he met the monk, he learned that true courage does not come from controlling fear, but from facing it with mindfulness and acceptance. The lesson he learned was simple but profound. The mind is not the enemy. Fear is not something to fight. By sitting with his fear, observing it, and letting it pass, Jack freed himself from its grip. The true warrior, he discovered, is not the one who avoids fear, but the one who faces it with grace. This lesson is essential. Our fears do not define us. They are a natural part of being human, but they do not control us unless we let them. By practicing mindfulness and acceptance, we can learn to face our fears with courage and live fully, without letting fear dictate our actions. The Garden of Acceptance, Emily's journey of self-love. Emily's story was one of external validation. She lived her life according to other people's expectations, seeking approval from others in every aspect of her life. She was successful, yes, but inside she felt empty, as though something was missing. The retreat in the garden helped her understand that true peace does not come from external achievements or the approval of others. It comes from accepting ourselves as we are, without the need for perfection. By letting go of the pressure to meet expectations and embracing her authentic self, Emily found the peace she had been searching for all along. This is the key. Self-acceptance is the foundation of inner peace. When we stop trying to be what others expect us to be, and instead embrace who we truly are, we can finally experience peace and happiness. We do not need to live up to anyone else's standards. We only need to live up to our own. The ripple effect of compassion. Tim's awakening. Tim's story demonstrated the profound power of compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. He had spent his life focusing on achievements and success, but when he learned to open his heart to others, to listen and be present, he experienced a deep transformation. He realized that compassion is not a one-way street. To truly give, we must also be willing to receive. When we open our hearts to others, we not only heal them but heal ourselves as well. The lesson here is that compassion is the key to connecting with others and with ourselves. When we embrace kindness, not just as an act of giving, but as a way of being, we create ripples of peace and love in our lives. By practicing compassion, we become more connected, more human, and more at peace with the world around us. The sacred pause, John's moment of stillness. Finally, John's journey taught us the power of the pause, the sacred moment between action and stillness. In his busy life, he had forgotten the importance of simply being. By practicing mindfulness and taking time to pause, he discovered that true peace does not come from doing more, but from being present in the moment. John's story reminds us that life is not about rushing to the next goal. It is about slowing down, taking the time to connect with the present moment, and allowing ourselves to just be. The pause is not an interruption. It is the space where peace resides, where clarity arises, and where we reconnect with our true selves. The circle of life, Samuel's embrace of change. Samuel's story was one of resistance, the resistance to change, the fear of stepping into the unknown. But when he learned to embrace change, he realized that life is a river that must flow. Change is not something to fear, but something to embrace. It is through change that we grow, evolve, and discover new possibilities. By letting go of his fear of the unknown, Samuel found peace and fulfillment in his life. Change is inevitable, and our resistance to it only causes suffering. When we learn to flow with change, to accept it as a natural part of life, we can live more fully and peacefully. Embracing change is the key to unlocking new opportunities and discovering the richness of life. The deep lesson, peace comes from within. As we reflect on the stories of these characters, we see a common thread running through all of them. True peace does not come from the external world. It does not come from achieving goals, meeting expectations, or gaining approval. Peace comes from within, from learning to embrace the present moment, from accepting ourselves and others as we are, and from letting go of the need to control everything. Each character's journey was a journey of self-discovery, a journey to uncover the truth of who they are beneath the masks they wear. The key to peace is not in doing more, but in being more. It is in learning to embrace life as it is, with all of its imperfections, and to find peace in the present moment. The lessons are clear. You are not your thoughts. The mind is a tool, not your identity. By observing your thoughts without attachment, you can find peace and clarity. Perfection is an illusion. Embrace your imperfections, for they are what make you unique and beautiful. Fear is not an enemy. It is a teacher. When you face your fears with courage and mindfulness, you free yourself from their grip. Self-acceptance is the foundation of peace. When you stop seeking validation from others and embrace who you truly are, you will find peace within yourself. Compassion is the key to connection. When you open your heart to others, you not only heal them but heal yourself as well. The pause is sacred. In the stillness of the moment, you reconnect with your true self and experience the peace that has always been within you. Change is a natural part of life. Embrace it, for it is through change that we grow, evolve, and find new possibilities. As you move forward in your own life, remember that peace is not something you need to chase. It is already within you, waiting to be discovered. The key is to stop running, to stop striving, and to simply be present in the moment. Embrace your journey to peace. As we conclude this journey, I encourage you to take the lessons from these stories and apply them to your own life. Take a moment to pause. Let go of the weight of expectations. Embrace change with open arms and cultivate compassion within yourself and for others. If these stories have touched you, if you found wisdom in these lessons, don't forget to subscribe to Buddhism in every moment. By subscribing, you're not only supporting this channel, but you're also choosing to walk this path of peace and mindfulness with us. Together, we can continue exploring the transformative teachings of Buddhism and bring more peace into our lives. Thank you for being part of this journey. Let's continue to grow, learn, and find peace, one moment at a time.